3, 2, 1, action! Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Ego News. It's your host Nadia speaking. I'm joined with Mel Yu. And we've also got a special guest with us today. We've got Kris Preston, who is brand owner for Zro. Hey Kris, how are you?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Not too bad, Mel.
Very good.
We're good?
I'm good, thank you.
For those of you listening who don't know, Kris, do you want to introduce yourself and the brand a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So, you've only given me half an hour today. You'll probably talk for 3 hours on my story. I'll try and do the straight to the point. Business background has been about 8-9 years now. I first started in the fitness industry as a personal trainer. I worked my way up to having my own facility, personal training studio. And funnily enough, during lockdown, when things were a little bit harder, I actually moved and expanded that to a bigger location. Zro was born initially 2019. We started as ZRO FUX, and we've only just rebranded to Zro, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. And it has started through fitness, was my initial avenue.
Was it gym wear?
No, not really. It's just, fitness for me is a mindset, and that's what I would coach with all my clients, whether it was online or in person, or even just with my trainers and helping people grow. Was helping them understand that, nutrition problems, training problems, motivation, all those things was generally coming from the mind. And if you could control your thoughts, you generally have better control over your emotions, which dictate your actions, and you get a better outcome. So I was always down that path when I would talk to someone, and I started coaching people online around Australia once I stepped out of the gym. And one of my clients one day, she was saying to me that she'd missed her squats, and it was a weekly call, so I'm holding her accountable to her program. And she said, I didn't do squats because I was worried about this guy over there. He sort of kept looking at me. And I said to her, why do you give a fuck about what anyone thinks? If you want to achieve something in life, you can't worry about what anyone thinks, or if anyone's judging you. And for all you know, you don't know they're thinking that. That's just in your head. You've decided that they're judging you, maybe because you judge other people, and that's why you've got that perception. So I said, you got to give zero fucks about that kind of stuff and just focus on yourself, stay in your lane, and just get it done.
Yeah.
A couple of weeks later, it was like my coaching group had sort of got wind of a bit of a zero fucks rhythm I was in at the time. I was getting tagged in different stories on Instagram. Who's that guy? The subtle art of not giving a fuck. Manson.
Yeah.
And I'm sort of thinking, wow, I feel like I could, I sort of became the zero fucks guy. And it's not a new term. And I thought maybe there's a way I could brand this. And Zro FUX started with me with that idea. I was on Canva. I got a blank template of a t-shirt. I did a rough design. I sent the design to a screen printer. I sent him 100 t-shirts, and he said, yeah, we'll be done within a week. I think I went fishing that day, and I was out on the boat in Port Phillip Bay, and he called me and said, yep, they're ready. So I took the boat into Rosebud, washed the boat up, flew down to Sorrento to the ferry, caught the ferry over to Geelong because he was based in Geelong. So I caught the ferry to Queenscliff, drove to Geelong, picked up the prints and the t-shirts, drove home to Essendon. During that time, from the drive from from Geelong to Essendon, a assistant I had at the time had built out our website and already uploaded our first couple of designs. So when I got home, I just uploaded a photo of the designs that we had, and I think I had to change the sizing on a couple of things, and we made our first sales that night. That's how it started.
Oh my goodness.
That's awesome.
It was just a very bang, bang, bang. And I'm someone that once I start something, I make sure I get it done, make sure I finish and follow through. And I think people initially maybe thought I was sort of taking the piss, Zro FUX, a little bit tacky, got a bit of stigma about it. But for the ones that actually got it, it started to really gain some momentum. And yeah, I haven't really looked back since then.
I mean, you tell that story and it's kind of this young Kris that's taking that drive and going, I just dropped, 100 t-shirts and got that screen printed, and to the business and the scale that it is now, it's pretty crazy. And it doesn't sound like you kind of had a forecast and a business plan and did all of that stuff, because I think when we look at startup brands, people can get into analysis paralysis, where they do all the research, all the design, everything. They need to have every single thing in a perfect, beautiful box before they actually go and launch the product. So what do you have to say for people that do sit and linger in that a little bit and they just have this fear of starting? What do you have to say to them?
Yeah, like you said, there's a fear somewhere. There's an underlying fear somewhere there to why they haven't started. I'm going to lose money. My friends are going to laugh at me. Mum and dad have already told me it's a dumb idea. Don't do it. Go get a job. Keep doing what you're doing. All that shit, right? And they're just people essentially trying to look out for you, or someone that's tried something and failed before. But, you know, in terms of getting like right into the numbers and the nitty gritty of everything, essentially you can be as calculated as you want, but it never pans out that way. I did a full business plan for the gym because that was brick and mortar, big scale. And tell you what, that fucking backflipped real fast. Well, can I swear on here? Sorry.
Let's do it.
I projected the gym was going to be doing like 12k weeks within 15 weeks. I'm like, this is going to be great. Now I was like 40k in the hole, thinking how the fuck do I get out? So I had no option. Like, I think the best thing to do is just to take action and to start, because what you think is going to be the way forward is not going to be the way forward. You're going to adapt. You're going to come across obstacles that force you to pivot and change direction. I was first doing our t-shirts, like we're folding them, packing them. We're buying the post bags from Australia Post. It costs you like $10 for a small satchel, and we're putting them in. And I'd have a little satchel bag, and I used to skate down on my skateboard because I fit like 10 in there, and that was our orders for the day. It had 10 satchels in the thing down to the local post, and I'd drop them off and go back and do another round the next day. And I would have to take off the tracking label, stick it on I had a diary. I've actually found it. It's actually downstairs.
That's awesome.
And I'd write their postcode next to the tracking label so I knew whose it was. Then we had to manually scan it in on our phone on Shopify to sync up that label to that person's order so they can get their tracking information. Now it's fully automated and it just goes. But back then I never thought that what we do now was possible. Exactly. But I've gotten here because we had to.
Yeah.
And we started, and once you start and you're committed and you stick to your why, you don't look for a way to quit. You just look at ways you can become more efficient and become better as a team and scale and grow.
I love that. I love that imagery of the skateboard and the small business thing, because you're kind of just winging it and go, oh, we got an order. 10 orders for a day is actually pretty impressive. People discovering it sometimes like, yeah, I got to win. That's awesome. I wanted to ask a selfish question about branding.
Yep.
So how did you've got ZRO FUX, which if you spelt it fully, it would be how it's spelled, but you've actually chosen to drop letters out of it to make it, I think, more artistically creative, attractive. What was your reason behind that, or how did you decide to spell even FUX? Probably because you couldn't spell it in a swear word way, but it's FUX. So what was the reason behind that?
I wanted anyone to feel like they could wear it. And I wanted mainly like someone's grandma who was doing her shopping and would see you wearing the shirt to not be overly offended by it.
Yeah.
I wanted it to be somewhat accepted by everyone. But since then, and like knowing what I know now, I mean, like we have just recently decided to drop the FUX part out purely due to scale and bottlenecks that we were always going to have. We always had a ceiling being ZRO FUX. We were always going to be, okay, 10% as example, 10% of people will wear these brands, but we'll probably like with the 1% of the 10%.
Yeah.
And it's not for everyone. Not everyone wants to make such a big, bold statement. You know, clothing, if you're going to wear clothing that says that on it, you're making a statement, and it's not for everyone. But people express themselves through clothing. So you would find out the ones that wanted to really express themselves is people that wanted maybe more minimal stuff and nothing so written on your forehead, so to speak, but loved the brand message. And we would find that a lot of people loved our brand message. They just didn't necessarily want it written so loud and so bold. So we did minimal designs, we did smaller stuff. It worked really well. But I still find like for us to really break through and get to that next level of scale, I think we do need to drop that out as our mainstream marketing strategy and still hold a space for our ZRO FUX and our OG members that helped us get us to where we are today. But yeah, there was no real reason other than that for dropping a few letters out. And yeah, I just thought if I could spell it in a way that it would be a little more accepted, then that was the angle I wanted to start with. And
yeah, awesome.
That's so good. And I know you're saying something about you just had to pivot because that's the direction that the business was going. How do you know when it's time to pivot?
I think that's a tricky one, because that can be another place where you've really got to reflect. And I think if you're not reflecting and looking back at why this is happening, you're probably not going to get the right answer. And I come from a very strong place of good questions get you good quality answers. And I just ask, when I'm reflecting, I'll ask myself tough questions, and I'll just keep asking a different question again just to see if I can get a different response from myself. And I think pivoting like that, I can be very sporadic too. I can get an idea and just be like, all right.
Pivot, yeah.
Yeah, like, guys, we're moving to Zro tomorrow, and everyone in the warehouse is like, what the fuck's going on? Like, we just did all this stuff. I'm like, yeah, that's cool, it's all right, we're going to Like, I can be like that, but I've also found in the past that can disgruntle your staff and your team too. So you need to be wary of that as someone who's very, like myself, a bit ADHD and a very go. I think not everyone's like that, so you need to be wary of that. But knowing to pivot is a tricky one. I think I generally will stalemate for a period of time, and then I'll realize, like, yeah, we've got to change.
Yeah, and listening to your market as well, like what you were saying then about scalability.
Yeah.
Probably when you realize that that bottleneck is a lot closer than you realize, and going, okay, well, who was it saying that you were potentially going to get stocked? We might not name the retail stockist name, but it's like, okay, cool, but potentially you might just need to drop the FUX and grow that way. So I think listening to the market as well really plays its part.
Yeah, definitely. Like, just on the back of that, we're not at that bottleneck yet, like you said it perfectly. We're not there yet, but I can see that. I know in the next 6 months, if we want to really scale and start to dominate Australian but also international expansion, that's got to be cut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I will almost put you on that scalability to the brands that Australian streetwear are really known for, your NXPs, your Nina Pasadena, your Nana Judy, all of that. You're almost, the young guns that are climbing, because inevitably these OGs that take over Maya and David Jones and get stopped there, they've got different things, and there's always a new wave of brands coming. So I'm excited for you. I'm super, super excited for you and how quickly you've scaled. On the journey of entrepreneurship, I guess I want to know the opposite ends of the spectrum. So one is, what would you say the most rewarding part of this journey has been? And then on the other end of that, what has been your biggest struggle or challenge? Because I don't want to say failure.
Yeah, sure. So first question, most rewarding would 100% be the amount of emails that we have received from customers who have had life-changing experiences through wearing our brand. And that was what I initially wanted to set out to achieve, and we did it. And I didn't realize the true power of our brand until maybe 8 months in. We had a lady who sent us an email, and she hadn't been out of her house for literally 3 years. She had debilitating anxiety and didn't want to leave her house. Her niece bought her one of our tank tops for Christmas, and on Boxing Day she cut 3 laps of the Brisbane River.
Well,
and
because she just didn't give any more fucks.
She didn't give a fuck anymore.
That's so cool.
And when I heard that story, like, I had shivers, like goosebumps. I think I had watery eyes. I can be a bit soft at times. I look tattoos and stuff, but I'm a human. So like that really sunk the boots in. That, like, no matter how much criticism we may have copped, oh, this is tacky, that shit, oh, you bogans, but whatever, they're the ones that didn't get it initially. All of those critics to me were just completely silenced, and I was like, wow, like, you're going to focus on those people who literally are just trying to bring you down, because that's Australia. That's what people do, a percentage anyway. And then we have so many people that their lives have literally changed.
That needed your brand. And if your brand wasn't there, not like, who knows where she would have been, but it was your present, your gift, what you put into the world that's actually helped her achieve that.
Right. And when I realized the impact that had, I was... it was just it really solidified the brand and my belief that it did have good legs to get us to where we've gotten to. Yeah. I mean, like, we're still growing. Pivoting now and rebranding is risky because we are growing really well, but I think it's, moving forward, I think it's the best thing for us. Biggest struggles, I honestly think our biggest struggle would have been probably post-lockdown, to be fair. Like, during lockdown, we did super well. I think most e-com brands did really well. Our marketing costs were generally quite low. They're now up like 300, 400%. So we've seen margins be completely squashed overnight just as we've come out, and obviously we're in a very inflated market at the moment. So that was very challenging to navigate through that, because I have other businesses as well. When everything is feeling a bit of a pinch at once, that's when I don't quite stress, but it can dictate decisions I make that may not be the right ones, because they may be based off an emotion. And I think I made some decisions that were purely emotional during that phase, where now that we're through that and I'm making decisions that, you know, come from the heart and are more calculated, things run a lot easier that way, because you find that emotional decisions at the time may have worked, but they bite you in the bum moving forward.
Of course. And speaking about post-lockdown, you jumped into Ego Expo, and bought a booth, and, you know, what was your thought process for that, considering that
there
was
wasn't
a challenge?
one. There was not one single thought into that. I mean, I had this idea that I just got the market wrong. I had this idea that people were going to be flocking in and buying all of our stuff. We're going to sell out. So I'm like, sweet, let me just drop like 20K on stock and have it out the back in boxes. We had like 3 boxes stacked up behind our booth. We set it up basically like a retail store. I'd never done a market store or anything before. It kind of worked, but yeah, in hindsight, it wasn't the way forward. This year, we'll take a very different approach.
Yeah,
but
I was going to say, you signed on again for this year though.
Yeah, we did, because I don't like to be beaten. I like to do things right. And, you know, just because you do something once and it was a flop doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it again and come back better. So I wanted to come back to Ego and make sure that, you know, we did it differently this time, and make things easier on ourselves and a better experience for people coming to the expo, instead of just all these clothes racks everywhere. You know, we're going to be a lot different, but there wasn't a lot of thought into it.
What would the values, I suppose, be like attending an event like that, an in-person event? What do you see are the benefits for brands to be connected to a platform like Ego's?
I think it's good feedback. If anything, that was probably the best thing that we got from it. Was, you know, sometimes you don't know if your brand's hit the mark. Like when you're doing like any e-com brand, you're online, so that's your presence. You can't really gauge how well your brand's going from a couple of comments from God knows who they are, where they're from, whether they're from another brand, they're just hanging shit on you because they want to try and bring you down. You don't know all of that. But when you're face to face in person, you know, obviously you get to build relationships, people get to meet, you know, the owners if they're there, and the staff. I think that's a big thing for a small brand. People like to buy from people they trust. And yeah, if you can show up and just be a good face, I think that helps. But we would get people walk past and they would have a bit of a laugh and go like, oh, ZRO FUX, that's cool, you know, and they'd keep walking. I'm like, oh, they didn't buy anything, but I'm like, he'll remember us, and, you know, he liked it. So, yeah, it was, if anything, it was good to get a gauge on, I suppose, how your product's going. And, you know, if I had sat there and everyone walked past and said, oh, that's tacky, that's crap, you know, I might have had to think back then and go, geez, we need a pivot here. Like, we haven't really hit the market well. So, yeah.
I think that's a main thing that, what you've highlighted is people buy from people when it is that small business. And it's about having a lifetime customer rather than just that one-off consumer as well. And converting that, what we say is there's 80 odd brands, 70 odd brands at Ego. The consumer can't physically go and buy everything from everyone. However, when they're ready to make that next purchase 2 weeks down the track, 3 months down the track, if you can be one of those brands that are memorable and at front of line with a nice immersive experience or some sort of memorable activation, that's when they're going to get their next purchase going, what was that brand I really engaged with and loved 2 months ago at that expo I went to? I'm going to go and make that purchase now. And I think that's where we have to re-educate a lot of our consumers as well, a lot of our brands that come through, probably similar to you, where they don't know what to expect, so they order $20,000 odd worth of stock. But it's much more about the relationship building rather than the sales approach. Would you agree that that's kind of now coming into year 2 for Zro at Ego? Yeah. That's where you're focused.
Yeah, definitely. I think with a less cluttered layout, we will be able to spend more time on building more relationships instead of trying to be there just to try and push a sale. But like you said, create a long-lasting impact, because it's probably more the flow-on effect after the expo. Just because no one bought from you on the day, or you didn't sell your store out over the weekend, doesn't mean you did a bad job.
Yeah.
And I think that's how I felt initially. And then it was after, getting people from the expo like send us messages or wanting to collaborate and do some stuff with us, and other business owners from the expos reaching out and cross-venturing some ideas and things. And it was, hindsight's always a good thing. It's only hindsight that you can look back and say, oh yeah, that was definitely worth, a couple of grand for a booth. Like it's bugger all really for the exposure that you get.
Yeah.
I mean, you couldn't really spend that much on Facebook these days and get that in front of that many people.
All the real traffic return, like a tangible, because with ads, it's great, online presence is great, but then it's like, okay, 28,000 impressions, and I'm like, we actually saw that and then actually consumed it. It's kind of similar to traditional marketing these days with the billboard. They'll sell you on 1 million people will see your billboard, and it's like, how many of those actually are people
how do you track that?
Correct.
Yeah.
Chris, you've been awesome. Yeah. Do you have any other final words or?
No, do you have a bit of wisdom that you can grant some of the brand owners or some of the startups that are wanting to start up? Or
Yeah, wow.
Your top tip, if you had to leave people with?
Leave an impression, give zero fucks.
Yeah, 100%. I think if you're holding back right now, whether maybe you've got a brand and you've started and it's just not quite going, maybe you need to show up and do more content, but maybe you're not because you're worried about being judged from other people. And you probably need to apply an element of zero fucks to what you're doing in business to break through that. But yeah, some wisdom moving forward. Look, I had a good upbringing, but I didn't come from a lot of money. Like I did an apprenticeship in plumbing. When I started the gym, I had no money. I took a $30,000 loan from the bank to an unsecured loan for a car. And I opened my gym because they laughed at my business plan. So I went back the next day and got a 30 grand loan for a Commodore.
Isn't that crazy?
That's how I opened the
gym.
gym.
You can get a car on finance, but you can't get a business. Like it's actually insane. I got approved, I got approved my finance. I have a Lexus brand new, but they won't give me a business loan ever. And I've had my business for 6 years. I just think.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So it's like I went against the odds then. I could have easily just taken the bank's advice and not opened the gym, and I wouldn't be here today, because everything I learned in the gym, my marketing, my skills, business experience, built Zro. So I have to always be grateful of where I come from in the gym in its early beginnings. But think outside the box. Don't take no for an answer. Take a risk. Most importantly, just start. Don't get hung up on the numbers. I literally bought 100 t-shirts with the intention. I was like, fuck, I have to sell these now. I've just bought 100 shirts. If I don't sell them, they're going to sit in my box in wardrobe. And that was my mentality. My first goal was, all right, I got to sell 100 t-shirts. If not, they're going to sit there and look at me all day, and it's just going to dig at me all day. And you can start all the guilt trip and the victim stories. Oh, it doesn't work. Oh, failure, blah, blah, blah. But that's what's going to define you, whether you come out the other side and actually do make it work and put in the hard yards. Everyone wants to watch the latest and greatest Netflix series. You spend all these hours doing that, and tell everyone you don't have time to, go to the gym. You don't have time to do that Facebook ads course or whatever it might be. But you just have to start. And it sounds simple and silly, and it's probably cliche, but there's a quote, Jim Rohn, you don't have to be great to get started. You have to get started to be great. And it's very true.
Well thought.
Thank you, Kris. That was awesome.
So much for starting and, being part of the Ego community. I'm very excited for what is to come for the brand Zro. So make sure you stay tuned. Follow Zro. What's your personal? Do you need to shout that one out?
And I'll flunk yourself.
We'll put it all in the handles. But thank you so much for your time, Chris. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much.